Okay, so I was just asked to announce that at the research tracks, that's the next slot of parallel sessions. Please, the presenters could stick to around 15 minutes for their presentations. For this session, although we're running a bit behind time, I'm going to also allow 15 minutes for presenters, and then we'll truncate the discussion time a little bit, but we will have about 15 minutes for discussion as well. So, welcome to the first plenary session. My name is Herman Wasserman. I'm from the University of Cape Town, formerly from Rhodes University, and I'll be chairing this session. We have 4 speakers, and they will all be speaking to the topic of saving journalism and the media in the age of tech giants, collaboration or co-competition with the frenemy. So, this sounds like a very interesting topic, which I'm not going to attempt to summarize, but I will ask each of them to also introduce themselves briefly and to say something about where they are from and what they bring to the table. So I'll follow the order there in the program. First up is Thandi Smith. She's head of policy program at Media Monitoring Africa. So Thandi, please.
Hi, good morning, everyone. So it's a huge honor to be here this morning, and yeah, lucky that this is the first session. So hoping that everyone is still really highly energized, and there's going to be some good debate. So, as Prof. Wasserman said, I am Thandi Smith. I'm from Media Monitoring Africa. We are a civil society organization based in Johannesburg, and our core focus is monitoring and analyzing news media, mainly in South Africa, but with the change in media and platforms that is growing to a global or more continental and global level. We are a human rights-based approach, or we take a human rights-based approach to all of our research and our projects. And our core vision is a just and fair society that is empowered by free, responsible, and quality media. And I think that the term quality media is really key here, because I'm going to be talking about issues of credibility and media credibility and journalism credibility. And that if we want to start thinking about how to save journalism media in a tech age, we have to take into consideration the crisis of credibility that we find ourselves in. So I'm going to be talking just about why that's important, but then also offering a couple of practical solutions to determining what credibility is, how do we measure credibility, and some solutions for media themselves to improve their own credibility in this age that we find ourselves in. So what was really great this morning was a few of the keynotes and opening addresses spoke about the role of the media, and I just want to reiterate some of those points. I think what is fundamental is that we do see the role of the media as key to a functioning or participatory democracy, and I think we all understand the power of the media, and that those who dominate media dominate power, and the media have a fundamental role to hold the powerful to account, to hold politicians accountable, and to really be that conduit between citizens and the powerful. And I know I'm using the word powerful a lot, but it's really, really important to remember those dynamics. The decreasing credibility that we're seeing lately has really given a room for the increase of misinformation campaigns and what we like to call dodgy news. We really try to stay away from the term fake news, and there's various debates around that, but I will be referring to dodgy news throughout the presentation. Our approach to addressing issues of credibility is a three-pronged approach, and that is that audience, media consumers have a responsibility to become educated or become more critical around what they're consuming and how they're consuming media. there is also a responsibility for media themselves to improve their own credibility and really put an effort to challenge some of these narratives. A classic example is, when the rise of phishing scams with banks and corporates came about. Banks really took a concerted effort to try and communicate with their clients around, be aware of these phishing scams. This is who we are. This is our brand. This is how you recognize us. This is how you can communicate with us. This is what you see if we contact you. Media have the responsibility to do the same. And then on the other side, or the third sort of prong to or approach to these issues is media and digital literacy, and that's aimed at youth initiatives as well as adult level. So I don't know if you can see the slide very well, but I just wanted to show you our MMA's, what we call the theory of change to addressing credibility. Just to reiterate, MMA's vision that overarches all of this is a democracy that is strengthened and a just and fair society is encouraged. And through this is the role of the media. Well, the role of the media has a huge role, part to play in this. So when we're talking about actual issues of credibility, what our big aim that we would, in a utopian world, would like to see is a thriving, sustainable, trusted, and credible media. But how do we get about improving or increasing those elements? So we have three different indicators, three different elements that could see this change. And the first is media and journalistic institutions that help promote, encourage, and practice credible journalism. A public and civil society that are informed and help combat dodgy news, misinformation, and share trusted and credible content. I think that is, again, a really important point to consider is that one of the most viral ways of this happening is how people share the content. I think we all know those issues. The third one is a credibility rating system is developed, implemented, and widely adopted. One of the biggest challenges that we face at the moment is everyone's talking about credibility. Everyone knows what the problems are, but no one knows, well, there's not a lot of work being done to actually put measurements in place in how we define credibility. What indicators there are these universal indicators? Those indicators then become subjective and biased in their own rights. So we need a better universal understanding of credibility and credibility indicators when we talk about media and media content. So how do we do this? MMA's approach is to work with key stakeholders to build trust and credibility by, on the one hand, building positive elements, to build on the positive elements that exist, but then to combat the negative elements that exist. By building on the positive, that again is developing the credibility system or credibility rating system and creating transparent public awareness initiatives. One of these is a project that MMA has recently launched a few months ago, weeks ago, called Open and Disclose. And what this is a sort of platform that media and journalists can access and use to promote their own transparency and accountability mechanisms online. I'll go into a bit more detail about that if we have time later. So when we're talking about combating the negative, we talk largely about improving awareness with media consumers and the digital literacy initiatives and conducting a lot more research into dodgy news content, how these websites come about, how media can then counter those elements. So on how media can go about countering the rise of dodgy news sites, we have, through the research and the various projects that we run as an organization, we have determined various elements of credibility that one can take into consideration when trying to improve media's credibility. And this is specifically for media themselves. And these are elements that individuals can also take note of or try and understand to help improve their own understanding of what credibility is. So there are a few technical indicators. I'm not really going to spend time going through that, and that's just basic information on websites. Where it becomes interesting is the sort of weighted credibility ratings that they don't or in themselves determine credibility. But if you subscribe to certain things or you practice certain elements, they improve your credibility with your audiences. So some of these are things like your accountability mechanisms as media. And that is belonging to professional media bodies, such as your self-regulatory mechanism, bodies like the IAB, BCCSA, our press council, TANF, our more internet-oriented regulatory bodies such as ISPA and WASPA. Media need to subscribe to complaints mechanisms. And when they do subscribe to complaints mechanisms, this needs to be completely transparent and easily accessible by their audiences. We also talk about original content, and we see a huge rise in content being copied across platforms, and this in itself is to individual journalists. You find a lot of the articles done by anonymous or staff reporter or editor, and there's no indication of who produced the content. Some of this is you do find that content is produced by an editor or staff reporter. So that's why we talk about the threshold being satisfied. Majority of the content should be attributed. And then also addressing the advertising issue. So subscribe to certain standards. You know that on your more dodgy news sites, you're going to find very questionable advertising. I'm sure most of you know what I'm talking about. And your credible sites, obviously, there's a need to have more credible, your brand recognized advertising. Although I know that this is an entire discussion and problem in itself with programmatic advertising and that. So I know that I'm running over time. So I'm going to just go to the conclusion. So like I said, there are a couple of initiatives that are addressing these problems, your digital literacy training programs. But I think to end off, I just want to reiterate that just addressing issues of credibility and content isn't enough. Again, the media and digital literacy initiatives are critical. I know that we in a room full of experts and researchers looking at media management and economics. Need to develop economic sustainability models is a challenge. But the last point is that there's a desperate need to increase awareness and reinvigorate the discussion around media being seen as a public good and not as a business or a corporate. And I think I'll leave you with that.
Time. The next speaker is Matthew Buckland. He's a very well-known tech media strategist in South Africa.
Hi everyone. I don't have a PowerPoint presentation basically. My background, I've had a career in online media predominantly. I've never known the world of traditional media. Radio and newspapers and television was all foreign to me. I just know the online stuff. I worked for the Mail and Guardian. I worked for NASPAS, 24 Khan, BBC for a while. And then I decided to put my journalism degree to good use, and I went and started a digital marketing agency. And then I became part of the problem, actually. I took advertising grants, from publishers, and put those advertising grants on predominantly two tech giants, which is Facebook and Google. So sorry about that. In our company, we also had a media publication, and it's quite interesting. As our company grew, what happened to the media publication, the media side of the business, what happened to the digital marketing side of the business was almost a microcosm for what's actually happening out in the industry. So while the media publication really struggled and shrunk, it was once 80% of our business, it's now 6% of our business. The digital marketing side, which is really hooked up to Google and Facebook, actually flourished and grew. So this is a very real question for me. I play on both sides. I'm a media owner as well as a digital marketing practitioner. I've kind of seen how this has evolved. And the question is collaboration or competition with the frenemy. I think it's quite an academic question, to be honest, because I don't think publishers have any choice but to work with the big platforms, with the big tech giants. And there's a great saying, keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. I think there's a small mercy in that Facebook and Google have indicated that they don't ever want to be content creators. They'll never play in the content space, because if they ever do that, and they don't ever will, we might as well just pack up. And I mean, it's no secret that publishers have found themselves massively disrupted. I mean, online publishers, internet sites, I'm not talking about traditional media, have been massively disrupted and are searching for a business model. I hear about how print and television and traditional media is an unhappy place. Well, you must see that online publishing is absolute hell. And the reason being is you've got companies like Google and Facebook competing directly for those advertising dollars. I've seen it. They go to the agencies, you've got the online publisher, you've got Facebook and Google, and obviously the agency is going to go for the better advertising model. And quite frankly, Facebook and Google have better advertising models. You can target advertising like you cannot do on most online publishers. You get better return on investment for companies, and that's just the reality of it. Is that media has actually been beaten by companies that have better advertising models. So advertising used to be an irritation for me. I used to hate advertising on newspapers. Suddenly advertising is interesting for me. On Facebook, if you ever look at I'm an avid mountain biker, if you ever look at my Facebook feed, you'll see mountain biking adverts. I mean, that's amazing. That's useful advertising for me. Who ever thought that advertising could be useful and enjoyable? And I think that's why the industry is actually moving to platforms like Facebook and Google. And if you think about it, one of the big problems for the media industry has just been a complete lack of innovation. So you look at the banner ad, for example. The banner ad is still one of the most prevalent sources of advertising in online media. The banner ad is a pre-social, pre-search advertising invention. All right? You can't share a banner ad, and you can't search a banner ad. All right? That's why native advertising or content advertising is a much more innovative and a much more recent, it's a much better model for publishers. Because you could share an article and you could search an article. And as long as native advertising is done ethically and is done in a way that doesn't deceive the article, you can call it what you want. I think it's a great, it's the big hope for online publishers, and it's the big hope for media. So these massive platforms are not going to go away, and I don't think readers are going to start loving banner ads anytime soon. So as media companies, you've got to make the relationship work for you. And there's a lot of complexity in this question too. So if, let's say I was a startup media company and I want to start my media company, my publication, I'd see Google and Facebook as my friend. They're my big opportunity to get my content out there. The minimal revenue that Google actually does give to publications, that's actually a massive revenue for a small startup. It's the big media companies with existing legacy infrastructure. Those are the ones that are probably more worried about Google and Facebook. But I do think that we also need to differentiate between the two tech giants, Facebook and Google. I think Facebook is probably more of a danger for media publications than Google. Facebook has broadcast that it actually wants to create a walled garden. Even, I think, 4 or 5 years ago, Mark Zuckerberg said he actually wanted Facebook to be a second internet, a rival to internet, a safe space, because there's a lot of dodgy stuff out there on the internet. Whereas if you think about it, Google, on the other hand, they're publishers. Google's almost entire existence depends on publishers. And Google's done more for publishers than Facebook's ever done. It's possibly just a life cycle thing for the companies. You know, Facebook is still evolving, it's still quite a young company, whereas Google is a lot more established. How's my time? All right. So I think Google is doing a lot for publishers. I think we've seen the digital news initiative in Europe. There's another initiative in the States that's just small. You can argue that that's blood money or it's poultry. At least it's something. Google doesn't have to invest in media. But I really think that the salvation for media is around diversifying the revenue streams. So some publications actually see their websites, their online websites that get millions and millions of users that they're unable to monetize as a loss leader. They see that as the loss leader, and then the answer to creating a sustainable media business is to create other businesses around that media property, such as going to eventing, which is pretty successful. I think we touched on it, but I think packaging banner ads with native advertising, editorials 2.0, call it what you want, that is a great revenue stream for publications. And I think there's a lot of salvation and a lot of optimism around that type of revenue model. I think video is absolutely massive. YouTube, I think, is overtaking Facebook as one of the. I also think that I used to hate paywalls, but I've changed my view on paywalls. I think intelligent paywalls, metered paywalls that offer the user a value proposition, in that they will personalize content and relevant content and personalize advertising and relevant advertising, what Facebook's been doing very successfully for the last 10 years, are also, if implemented correctly, are also a great revenue stream for publishers. And I also think publishers need to innovate. We need to see better banner ads. I think banner ads don't connect with people emotionally. I mean, video connects with people emotionally. Banners are boring. They're getting in the way of content. I think there's a lot more innovation that can still be done there. There's a lot of work being done in the IAB in the UK, in the States, and the IAB here around that too. And then also I'd like to see innovation around payment models. This continent's got the most amazing mobile payments innovation that the world has ever seen. I mean, everyone has heard about M-Pesa in Kenya. In South Africa, we've got SnapScan, which is an amazing mobile payments invention. We've got the We Group, which is a 400 million rand company that powers Discovery Health, the vitality rewards behind Discovery Health. They also allow you to buy coffee with an app as well, Vida Cafe Coffee. I'd like to see some kind of link up with the We Group. I'd like to see some kind of link up with SnapScan, with media companies, to create easier ways of paying for content, seamless ways of paying for content. So what I'm saying is there can be more innovation. There could be a lot more innovation and more partnerships between media and other tech players in the industry. I think just to end off is that I think also there's a trust crisis on the internet. We've seen it, the quality crisis on the internet. There's a lot of crap out there on the internet, and I think that is probably where the media, the model will change, and possibly even, and this is also wishful thinking on my behalf because I've got a media property which I want to succeed, but the model also might swing back to the trusted, credible brands, and that goes for content as well as advertising. And we've heard about programmatic advertising. Advertisers, it's been incredibly successful, it's incredibly cheap, you get more bang for your buck. But we've also heard that programmatic advertising has raised concerns around advertisers because they've lost control over where their ads are flighted, and often they're flighted in poor quality, low quality locations, which has caused concerns for many advertisers. I can see a place where a news publication, that's been in business for the last 30 to 40 to 50 years, and we know that age builds credibility, really swinging back and becoming a key place for advertisers once more. It may be wishful thinking, we can debate it, but it's a symptom of the internet where there's low cost barriers and anyone can create a publication. It's a symptom of what's now known as fake news. So the quality brands can and will prevail. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matthew. Our next speaker, Professor Stephen Waldman from Michigan State University in the US, where he is Professor, and J.H. Quello, Chair of Telecommunication Studies Emeritus. Welcome, John. Thank you.
You want to turn it into a PDF? Yeah, work really.
Clear anyway, so there was no confusion.
I know I did that, yeah. I will try to write it down.
To share
Very interesting.
Colleagues, it wouldn't be a conference if we didn't experience technical problems. So it's part of the experience. Just be with us.
Sorry. It took more than one day. I came here with Sinek there.
Yeah, good. All right. Thank you. We're back. We can start again. Thank you.
Okay. While we're waiting for the video to warm up, I want to say my thanks that Rhodes University for sponsoring this and the organizers for doing an incredible job. It's putting together a fantastic conference. It's really impressive crowd. And hopefully, maybe you'll learn something from me. Still waiting, starting to warm up. I just want to say, it's rare that two panelists preceding me have as much that's as relevant 1% as we just had today. That Fanny, I'm used to using fake news, but she has the word dodgy news and dodgy sites. How do you know them? Because they get you can see dodgy ads on them. And from that perspective, I can say that Facebook is a lot less dodgy than it used to be. When I first signed up for Facebook, I kept getting all these ads for all these young ladies with very attractive, dying to spend time with somebody just like me. They aren't bothering me anymore. And then, but I was wondering whether somebody like Matthew was responsible for those ads being there in the first place. Looks like we're out. Okay, so journalism and the tech giants, as you can see from my subtitle, I look at competition, co-opetition. You have complementarity or cooperation and competition in there. My feeling, I'm an academic economist, I guess I forgot part of my introduction. Professor Emeritus, which means retired from Michigan State University and now visiting at College, University of Colorado. Doing my research and writing, just not getting paid anymore. And when I look at it from an economics perspective, although I may change my ideas as I go through this conference and see the people, I see the competition dominating the cooperation in these relationships. I'm going to use Facebook as a primary example. I think in terms of some of the forces we're looking at, the recirculation of with users recirculating news, that they play a bigger role, but I think you can use a diagram to present from the perspective of just about any tech giants, especially like Google. Now, since we have the word co-opetition in there, I thought I would go back to the Brandon River Nail book called Co-opetition, which was published in 1996. And they're responsible for actually making co-opetition a term of art that everybody uses today. And they use something they call the value net to explain the relationship between complementarity and competition, or complementors and competitors. And they're looking at the top of the diagram, you have your customers, the bottom, suppliers and various inputs, and the suppliers are sources of their costs, the customers are sources of revenue, and if you're looking at competitors, they're trying to take away your revenue. They're offering substitutes that lower the price you can take from making it harder to get as big an audience. They compete for your inputs and drive up the prices, so they narrow your profit spread. On the other hand, complementor does exactly the opposite. It makes your product better for your customers, and therefore you can charge more, or maybe get more of them. And it makes it easier to produce your product at lower cost, whether it's usually through efficiencies that are gained in some way or the other. Now let's put Facebook then into this. And I'm going to use a local newspaper, and it's called Market A, as a local market, and put Facebook in there as a complementor, and Facebook as a competitor. Or Facebook is really a competition facilitator as well. I'll come back to that on the next slide. And what does Facebook do to complement? Well, it expands the reach. It allows a newspaper or any other media organization to make content available through Facebook to people that might not otherwise have been exposed to it. And therefore, you have a larger audience to sell. On the other hand, on the other side, we see Facebook also selling ads to that same audience. Right? Why else would they be a complementer in the sense they couldn't profit from it? And in addition, they're not only your complementor, but they're the complementer of every other newspaper out there. And so they're providing content access to other people's content. When you come back up, looking at your readers and advertisers, it gives advertisers more ways to find access to your audience, and it gives your readers or your audience other people to turn to for content. And so that's the negative side of it. And my feeling is that it's the negative side that will probably dominate. At least that's the way things are going right now. So just expanding this out to local newspapers in markets A and B. Now suddenly you have the newspaper in market A, some of their content is available to those in market B, and vice versa. And so this is just illustrating what I said before. We're seeing offering options to your consumers that they didn't have before, and therefore what you can drive from your potential audience is smaller, because you can charge less. Advertisers have access to other ways of reaching the same people, and because the audience is being split between more content suppliers, your audience is smaller as well. So the effects of all this on newspaper profits or any other mainstream media organizations' profits are pretty negative. Positive is what I just mentioned, access to more readers or a larger audience and advertisers, especially people that otherwise wouldn't have been part of the audience. But I think it's really dominated by the negatives, that you're getting a small slice of this extra audience in exchange for giving them a lot of people access to the audience you got, and add up their small slices, they dominate what you get from the others. And that has some obvious consequences. One is newspapers carry less non-local content. Why is that? If I'm going to Facebook, or if I'm going to any online news aggregator, what I'm looking for, not my local market news, I can just do a search. If I want to see what President Trump said today, actually I have to go back about every 15 minutes because it changes. But nevertheless, that's an easy thing to do. If I want to find out what's happening with the NAFTA negotiations or anything international or national, I can do a search and get it very easily. And that's, that makes sense. So maybe it's my local content that remains what's specific to me and what differentiates me from competitors. On the other hand, that's not of much interest to the people that are coming from other markets. So, but is that enough to preserve us? I don't think so. If we look at what a newspaper used to offer, and still does, it's a package of different kinds of content. And so you've got the sports, you've got the international, the national, the business, and what's purely local. And all these other things, the sports, unless it's like a local high school team or whatever, the international, national business, those are things you can pick up from any publication, like a lot of national publications. So that's where the competition takes place. You're left with only the local as being specific as a pure differentiator from other competitors. Is that good enough? Because what we used to charge, we used to sell a bundle, and people were paying for the various elements of the bundle. I want the local, I get the national, the business, and so forth. Every one of those adds some value. And now those sources of value are disappearing because they're being skimmed off. You're left with a smaller paper, but because there's I tend not to call it, other people call it cross-subsidization. Economists wouldn't, because it all pays for itself either directly or indirectly. But because there are complementarities in the way that you create value there, you lost those complementarities. And the value is less than you would have had otherwise to support the local component. And I think a part of that then is you end up with less investment in local reporting. We see that happening. When I first moved to Lansing, East Lansing, Michigan, to go to Michigan State 19 years ago, we had a paper that was probably 20 pages. And by the time I left, it was down to about 10. What's going is the local reporting, it's the local content. Partly because you have to have an audience large enough to justify that expenditure of the extra resources to bring back a payment based on that larger audience. As you start to lose that, as you become unbundled, the bundle is less valuable, then the return at the margin to investing in that content goes down. So content becomes of lower quality. Okay? There's a term called secondary gatekeeping that I learned through my former dissertation student, Sonia Deanne Song, who now works for a company called Chartbeat in New York. They monitor online audiences. But she was looking at the effect of Facebook on local journalism. And so you learn from your students, and now she's a co-author as well. And secondary journalism is what we heard before, already in these sessions, is that it's part of the media being a producer, but in the sense that I'm getting something from my local paper, it's online, and if I like it, then I will forward that to friends. Facebook makes that very easy. And they will forward it to other people. And so what I'm doing, I'm becoming a secondary gatekeeper. And part of the audience then for the newspaper is the people I decide I want to share with. So their interest in what appeals to me is partly what I think will appeal to my friends. Right? And that changes the nature of the audience and the kinds of content you're going to design to appeal to that audience. I'm down to 5 minutes. I've got 7 minutes of slides. And so here's a sort of diagrammatic illustration. This came originally in someone's dissertation, and then it's in a paper that we presented at another conference in 2016. which eventually would be part of a book that I'm co-editing. But if you look down here, and here she was working with data from PBS NewsHour. Right? Public Broadcasting System's NewsHour is the primary news source in the U.S. And you can look at what PBS was doing. You have the producers, you have the editors down here deciding what goes into various venues. And one of those venues is now Facebook, right? It goes to the Facebook fans of PBS. Then they send it to their friends who may or may not be fans of PBS. It goes back to the algorithm. The algorithm figures out what their friends like, and so it reinforces the selection for that. It goes to people even farther down the chain. But it goes beyond that, because you have other legitimate news sources, which I talked about before, but it also creates an avenue for fake news to get into this circulatory pattern. And once you're doing that, the criteria for judging what gets recirculated is not journalistic standards. It's what appeals to people as a clickbait. Does it make them laugh? Does it reinforce my prejudices? And so on. So it brings us back to people. People have less time and cognitive resources than would be needed. And it's always been the case, and it's worse now, to process information from all sources. And now we're increasing the deluge, new information from online sources. So we employ various mental shortcuts to minimize the cognitive load required to process information. We ignore a lot, and based upon relatively simple characteristics, we select what we want. Do my friends like it? Furthermore, if we're looking at the opportunity cost of looking at non-dodgy news, part of that is the funny cat video that now my friends are sharing with me. So I'm less likely to spend time with the non-dodgy news. And we also are characterized by strong confirmation bias. This all comes from the psychological literature. And because of that, that means this comes back to what Sandy was talking about. Even if I have people that are out there certifying the news as credible, that doesn't mean I'm going to take the time to look for it. And so how do we get people to look for credibility? I don't know. And especially if we have confirmation bias, then confirmation bias will naturally be away, but what is generally viewed as credible, the words what my friends see as credible, or my community says this community is credible. That community, though, is not local. It's all the people that share my predilections in the first place. And so we end up then with echo chambers, filter bubbles, and so forth, and people reinforcing each other. And it's this online environment that's been created that makes that possible. How am I doing it? 2 minutes. 2 minutes, okay. With 4 minutes of slides. All right. This is a chart not produced by an academic. It's, actually, it was circulated by an academic on Facebook before I first came across it. But it's produced by somebody who happens to live in Boulder, Colorado, where I live. And she's an intellectual property attorney whose passion, is looking into the nature of journalism. This is not, she doesn't do content analysis, so it's sort of personal judgment. I think she should do more of the source credibility, which I think Andy was talking about, but most people find it to be pretty good. And if you look at the upper green box here, these are traditional, for the most part, traditional media organizations. Right? These are the people that are either breaking news or they're reprinting news. And as you move down to the yellow box, these are people that are doing more interpreting the news. And they have ranges of legitimate interpretation depending on your point of view, right? And then we get down here to people that are offering slanted and biased presentations of news. And finally, you're getting down to those that are inventing their own facts, right? Down at the bottom. And if you look at the origins of all these companies, for the most part, the green and yellow boxes are occupied by people that are sort of catering to their own biases and prejudices.